all you Slashaholics, so welcome to Slash Sisters. I'm Slash Sister Jen.
And I guess that makes me Slash Sister Hallie, and we want to welcome you back to your favorite channel for horror movie reviews by true horror fans.
That's us, and y'all. Today we are stepping into the grief-stricken and fucking twisted world of Ari Aster with his very first feature debut film, Hereditary.
We're also welcoming back two actors to our channel
Yes.
that have been here once before. Toni Collete, who was in... God, what did we do with her? Krampus.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
She was in Krampus.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabriel Byrne, who was also in Ghost Ship.
Yep. And gosh, this film in particular is like probably one of Toni Collette's best performances ever on screen. I want to say it's not to say that this is Ari Aster's first time messing with people's heads, because his very first short film, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, which is available right here on YouTube. You can watch it if you want. I don't recommend it. It's easily one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen in my entire life. If you're like me, though, watch it. But if you're not like me, don't watch it. I don't even know if... I mean, I recommend everybody tries it, but beware.
I mean, this is already fucked up enough for me.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So why don't we just go ahead and jump right into this character study on grief, mental health, and just how it can affect whole families in horrendous ways.
Yeah. That's for sure. So the movie actually starts out with an obituary for Ellen Lee.
Ellen Lee apparently is Toni Collette's mother in this.
Right.
We then meet the Graham family. Annie is a miniature artist, which they actually, the person that did the special effects for this did the miniatures. And
yeah, like volunteered to do it. He went to Ari and was like, "So who's doing the miniatures?" And Ari was like, "Well, you are." Essentially,
yeah, basically. And her husband, Steve. So Annie is Toni Collete. Steve is Gabriel Byrne. By the way, Gabriel Byrne's too old to be Charlie's pet.
Well, I mean...
He's in his 70s.
Yeah, well, guys can have kids as long as they want. It's the women that gotta worry. Toni Collette's not really all that young for this role either, but...
But anyway, Steve is a psychiatrist, and they have two children, Peter and Charlie.
Yep. The family is attending the funeral of their matriarch, or at least, I guess, Annie's mom.
Estranged matriarch, at best.
From what I understand and from what they were at least back in each other's lives towards the end, because she did have dementia and she was living with them, and they were
they were in each other's lives when Charlie was born, but right. She ended that stay of familial ties and then became estranged before getting back into her life with
Correct.
Annie.
There's been a lot of back and forth, I think, with Annie and her mother.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely a very fraught relationship.
Her mother, Ellen, was very secretive, and during the funeral, Annie remarks that there is a lot of strange faces there that she had just never seen before.
It's heartening to see so many strange new faces here today.
Sometime after the funeral, Annie goes to a bereavement support group. I have been to support groups like this before. I personally don't find them helpful.
I personally think Annie overshared.
Oh, yeah, she did. I think she just, word vomits.
Yeah, she had diarrhea of the mouth.
For sure. She talks about her troubled relationship with her mom, that they had been no contact after Peter was born, but then she came back into their lives when Charlie was born.
Mm-hmm. Also talked about her brother committing suicide because her mother was putting people inside of him.
And of course his suicide note blamed her, accusing her of putting people inside him.
Yeah. Interesting.
She talks about how when Charlie was a baby, her mother almost obsessed with the baby, even insisting on breastfeeding her instead of allowing Annie to feed her.
She wanted me to be a boy.
Even when you're a little baby,
She wouldn't let me feed you because she needed to feed you.
What?
She even made a model of that.
Yeah.
A miniature of that.
Well,
showing her mother with her breast out. Like,
I personally think that her miniatures is her way of dealing with certain things, because she also does it later in the film.
It's her way of
very
processing.
key scene.
And she even says of the scene, it's a neutral view of the
episode. We'll discuss that when we get to it later.
She also tells the group that her mother had dissociative identity disorder. She
also
calls
known
it
as
DID, but it used to be known as multiple personality disorder. It's not called that anymore, but as you can see, there is a history of mental health issues within the family.
And as I said earlier, she also reveals the mental health problems ran in her family, and that her schizophrenic brother hanged himself after accusing the mother of putting voices in his head when he was just 16.
And here is where we really start to get our first hints of why this movie is called Hereditary.
Yeah, it's all familial.
Interesting.
We see Peter and Charlie going about their day at school. At one point, we hear a pigeon hit the window of Charlie's classroom. She later goes outside and cuts the damn head off the pigeon.
And takes it home for an art project, right?
Yeah, because apparently she likes making sculptures and little trinkets and toys and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, the teacher even caught her making something in class and said...
Right before the pigeon hit the window.
Right. And like, are you finished? And she's like, just about. And she's like, well, why don't we finish the quiz before you continue with this?
Yeah. So... Meanwhile, back at the house, Steve gets a phone call from the cemetery. Letting him know that unknown perpetrators have desecrated Ellen's gravesite. We do not find out at this point that the body was taken, but it is implied, for sure, that something happened to Ellen's body. But he does not tell Annie about it, not wanting to cause her even more stress than what she's already under.
I mean, would you?
I don't know. That would be something really hard to hide from my spouse.
That night, Peter is invited to a party after telling his mom that it is a school barbecue.
Yeah.
She insists that he take Charlie with him. Yeah. And apparently, Charlie had a nut allergy.
Yeah, they mentioned it earlier.
Something about couldn't get a subscription for her EpiPen.
Well, she was eating a chocolate bar, and she walked up behind Charlie and was like, "Does that have nuts in it? Because we don't have the EpiPen with us."
Yeah.
Does that have nuts? Because we don't have the EpiPen.
As a parent of a child with food allergies, I've definitely forgotten the EpiPen before. Not that we've ever had to use it, and Olive's allergies are not super extreme. However, especially now, EpiPens are a lot more readily available. Every school has one. Obviously, Olive has hers at school if it's needed, but I'm guilty of not taking it with us everywhere we go. So
I don't know why we bring this up, but whatever.
Yeah,
we'll continue.
At the party, Peter leaves Charlie unattended so he can go smoke some weed with the girl from school, the cute girl from school. When he heads upstairs, he suggests to her that she eat some of the cake that is being handed out. But neither of them realize, even though they closely show somebody chopping up a whole fucking shit ton of walnuts. Like, I don't know what kids... I personally don't like walnuts. I would never put walnuts into a cake at a party.
I didn't think it was walnuts. I actually thought it was some type of meat, but the way that they were doing it is not how you fucking chop
No, it was like 2 giant chef's knives, like whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, he suggests that she eats some of the cake, not realizing there's walnuts in it.
Yeah. Needless to say, so this is where the EpiPen and the story of allergies come into play.
Okay. Yeah. So after eating that cake, though, her severe nut allergy is triggered, sending her into anaphylactic shock, which is honestly, like, so scary.
It's hard to breathe.
The one and only time that, like, I guess it was considered anaphylactic shock. Olive was 4 years old. She drank milk at school. She knew what she was doing. She knew she wasn't supposed to drink it. Did it anyways. Luckily, I worked literally blocks from her school. They called me immediately, and I went straight there and took her to the emergency room because I probably would have beat the ambulance, to be completely honest, as close as I was. So yeah, having a child go into anaphylactic shock is frightening. I think just terrifying. So she finds Peter, and she's like, I can't breathe, it's hard to breathe, and he carries her out of the house and takes her straight to the car and rushes off to the hospital.
As Peter drives Charlie to the hospital, she leans out the window for airflow.
Yeah. And actually, Millie Shapiro, who plays Charlie, she talked about this scene and filming this scene, and she said she absolutely loved filming this scene because it was like being on a roller coaster, because they were literally in a moving car and she was in a harness and they were filming it all. So, yeah, she actually loved filming this scene. But Peter sees a dead deer in the middle of the road and swerves to miss it. And accidentally decapitates Charlie.
It actually doesn't even look like she's decapitated at first. It just looks like it bashes her head in, and then he stops, and he's in shock, obviously.
Yeah, obvious shock. Let's take a moment for that to settle in, because, whoa, I know the first time I watched it, I was in shock. I can't imagine what Peter was thinking.
I unfortunately was not, because I've had most of this film ruined for me before we reviewed it. Because I watched entirely too many fucking horror documentaries.
Yeah.
I really do.
I know. I actually did. I mean, I watched this a couple of months after it came out. I did not see it in theater. I saw it as soon as it hit streaming. So yeah, that part was not ruined for me, and it was fucking shocking.
So Ari Aster just fucking psychoed us.
Yeah, literally.
Because every promotional material, all the trailers and everything like that, leading up to the release of this film, basically surmised that
Charlie's face is front, center, right in the middle.
Right, like she was the star of the fucking film.
She is the star of this movie. Or so we thought.
Not the case.
No. But I mean, it is kind of like an obvious nod to Psycho and Scream, which was an obvious nod to Psycho.
Right.
But yeah, it was quite a shock to see who we thought was going to be the main character literally lose their head a third of the way into the movie. If you hear any meowing, it's just because Ivy Girl's walking around on the set.
Yeah, she thinks it's time for food when it's really not. Anyway, it definitely makes for a little nod to both, like Jenny said, Scream and Psycho, where what we're led to believe is like the main protagonist killed off within, I think they said this was like a quarter of the way through the film, and Marion made it through, half?
I think, almost, not quite half.
It was almost
half.
And then Drew Barrymore's
character
was like 10 minutes.
12 minutes, yeah, I think.
That. You're right.
So, in shock, Peter drives the fuck home and leaves Charlie's headless body in the back of the seat of his parents' car and just walks inside and goes to sleep.
So yeah, Peter goes to bed as if nothing is wrong. We even actually hear Annie say, "Oh good, they're home. They made it home." He's awoken the next morning when he hears his mom leave to go get more balsa wood and discovers Charlie's headless corpse in the back seat of her car.
Yeah, I could not imagine. Like, we flash to, literally, Charlie's head on the side of the road, covered in ants. Like,
which apparently,
Millie Shapiro wanted to keep the head.
Yeah.
I would want you too.
She really wanted to keep the
I would love to keep a model of my own head that's been smacked. Yeah! Hell yeah, I want one too. But it's at this point that you see Annie completely trapped in her grief. This, honestly,
she's
like,
begging
this
to die.
part, yeah,
she's begging to die.
I just want to die.
I just want to die!
With this particular part of Toni Collette's performance,
I personally thought it was over the top.
Oh, I didn't. I thought it was the most perfect description of grief. I have personally been in that exact same position.
No, you haven't. You haven't lost a child.
No, but I have been
and you didn't lose your mother a week
screaming
prior.
at the top of my lungs, crying like that. I have. I felt what she felt on a level that, like, obviously it's not the same exact thing, but
right. trapped in your own depression.
Yes.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm just, you haven't been in the exact situation.
Obviously. How she didn't get nominated for a fucking Oscar for this movie,
horror.
I will never understand.
It's horror.
The Oscar nominations did just come out recently, and The Substance was nominated for Best Fucking Picture, you guys.
It won't win.
I don't care if it doesn't win. It was nominated, and that means
it
a
won't
lot.
win.
Demi Moore also got nominated, too. Anyways. Carry on.
The family is completely broken at this point. Following Charlie's funeral, Peter becomes reclusive and racked with guilt over his sister's death, as well he should. Mm-hmm. Annie becomes bitter and resentful towards Peter. I get it, but at a certain point, you also have to look at the fact that, you're not doing him any favors by being resentful to him. Yeah. So I get it. And yeah, she just kind of disassociates from them for a little bit.
Yeah, very much so. Steve tries to mediate some peace between the two of them, but Annie continues to burst at him with mean and hateful things. Even to the point where she tells him that she didn't even want to be his mom. That she tried to have a miscarriage with him. Yeah.
Well, she also tried to kill the kids at one point, too, while sleepwalking.
Also think she never wanted to be a parent. I don't think she ever wanted to be a mom. I think her mother forced her by heavy-handedly trying to get her to have kids because she wanted another chance at bringing pain in.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
She needed it. Anyways, yes.
Annie returns to the support group, but does not go in.
Mm-hmm.
She is then flagged down in the parking lot by a woman named Joan, or Joni, who gives her phone number and tells her to call her because she knows what she's going through. She lost her son and grandson recently in a drowning accident.
My son died.
So yeah, she can
supposedly.
Help. Yeah.
So she ends up calling Joan, and she visits her at her home, and when she gets there, she finds an eerily similar doormat to the one that her mom had made for her. She even says something to Joan about it, and Joan just says, "Oh, isn't that interesting?"
My mother used to embroider ones just like that.
Did she really? Isn't that funny?
Sometime later, while Annie is buying art supplies, looks like she finally got that ball fluid.
Yes, she did, eventually.
She is again flagged down in the parking lot by Joan. This time, though, she begs Annie to come to her apartment because she needs to show her something incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. So Annie goes back to Joan's apartment, and they perform a seance.
Or what
Joan tells her is a seance. So that they can communicate with Joan's deceased grandson.
Hi, Louie.
The cup that they are moving with the seance is moved on its own, and then a message is written on the chalkboard from her grandson.
Oh, Louie! I love you, sweetheart.
Do you know how they accomplished that effect?
Yes.
It was done practically
and not
with
easily.
Magnets. With magnets.
Yeah, because I was reading about it, and trying to get a magnet inside of a small piece of chalk like that is not easy. But yeah, they just used a magnet underneath the table with a piece of the magnet inside the chalk on top of the table.
Yep.
Very cool.
Speaking
of things being practical, pretty much I'm sure they probably used a little bit for certain things, but they tried very hard to do everything as practical as
much as they could. Yes, yeah. I did read
obviously,
that
most
the
of it was body floating and stuff like that.
Yeah,
there's things that they couldn't do practically, but
clearly
there was almost everything they did as practically as they possibly could.
On her way home from Jones, she hears a in the backseat of her car. We actually did forget to mention this earlier. Charlie was prone to making that noise. I don't know if it was just an involuntary habit that she had picked up, or...
So I have an explanation for it.
Well, wait till we
get
to
to
the
end.
Wait
till we get
to
what
the
I
end.
think.
Wait till we get to the end,
yes.
because I know what your explanation is.
I have an explanation. I have what I think is I'm going to give you guys my full explanation of the movie at the end of this.
Because let's be honest, this is a fucked up.
It's a fucked up movie, and honestly, I watched it 2 or 3 times before I really grasped what was happening in the movie. Like, there's so much detail, and Ari Aster is really fucking good at that. Like, hiding incredible details. He is...
Well, he also, when he approached the filming of this, and mind you, like we said, this is his writing and directorial debut for a major motion picture, he had, like, the entire thing storyboarded in his mind or on storyboards before they even shot a single frame.
Months before they even shot a single frame.
So he had every detail planned out exactly the way he wanted it done.
Yeah. If there's anybody currently that is, like, extremely attention to detail, it's Ari Aster, Robert Eggers. I mean, those guys, literally, like, they, down to, like, things that are in drawers that you'll never see. Things that, like, never seen on camera.
Things that are only on camera for, like, seconds.
Split second. But it's very detailed, and he makes sure, like, the more you watch this movie, the more you notice things. I've seen this movie probably 4 or 5 times now, and this last time I watched it, it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that before. Yeah, there's a lot. So, later that night, Annie convinces her family to attempt the seance, waking them up in the middle of the night saying that she had been talking to Charlie.
Yeah, the way she wakes up, Peter knows she's really fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, before waking him up, actually waking him up, because she...
Mom, what are you doing?
Obviously has, like, a nightmare, or he has a nightmare, or whatever.
Where she ends...
I never wanted to be your mother.
They both end up covered in paint thinner. Again.
Because she told the story of how she almost killed them sleepwalking, because she's apparently prone to sleepwalking. Whatever. Objects begin to move and smash, and Peter is terrified when Annie becomes possessed and starts speaking in Charlie's voice.
Yeah, it's weird. It's only for, like, it's when she says hello. It's clearly coming out of Annie's mouth, because her mouth moves, but it's not her voice.
But then the very next word out of her mouth is her voice, and she says, "Mother?"
Yeah.
Hello?
Mom?
Mom?
Why are you scaring them?
Yeah. So Steve throws water on her, which breaks the spell, but they are all clearly terrified.
They are distraught!
Yes, just a little bit.
I mean, Peter, who I'm still confused as to why he does what he does right here. He literally breaks down and is bawling.
Yeah.
He's a 17-year-old boy. Why the fuck are you bawling?
I don't know, maybe because he accidentally just killed his sister and he's been through a lot in the last week or so? I don't know. Maybe he's just breaking down. I don't know.
Now Peter begins to be haunted by supernatural forces, seeing rings of light, which we did notice earlier.
We have seen a couple, but we've not, like, it becomes a lot more concentrated after this.
Well, after
the seance. Or supposed
travel through rooms and hearing Charlie's.
Annie suspects that Charlie's spirit has become vengeful and demonic, or at least evil. She sees images manifesting in Charlie's journal, sketchbook, basically threatening Peter and showing him dead.
She throws the book into the fireplace, attempting to sever the connection because, according to the seance that she performed, she needed a trigger object to bring Charlie back.
The chalkboard was what was supposed to be for the grandson, and then
so
the book
was for Charlie.
Right.
But as she throws it into the fire and it does ignite and starts blazing, her arm spontaneously combusts and does not go out with any attempts. So then
until she takes it back out of the fire.
Until she takes the book out of the fire and stomps the flames out on that.
And then her arm goes out.
Yeah.
Crazy. So at this point, Annie decides she's going to go through her mom's belongings. She goes up to what was her mom's room at this point and finds an old photo album that shows Ellen being crowned as Queen Lee, the leader of a coven or cult, whichever way you want to look at it. I think it's cult.
I'm sure it's a cult.
Yes.
Also in the photo book are pictures of Ellen with Joan and other members of her mother's cult.
Yep. People that were at the
people
funeral.
that were at the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, people that
we're not
kind of seen sprinkled through the movie a little bit too,
right
here and there,
right,
just kind of random.
But these pictures aren't just like, oh, like my mother knew these people like later in life. No, they're like years.
Mm-hmm.
Like
she's known them for a
years.
long time. Yes. She finds another book that has highlighted passages describing the demon king Haman, who wishes to inhabit the body of a male host. The summoner of Haman will receive wealth and rewards. Interesting.
She goes to the attic and is immediately swarmed by flies. In the attic, Annie finds Ellen's rotting headless corpse, bloated, blackened, and all this other stuff, and occultist runes drawn in blood above her mother's
including that symbol
body.
That Annie has been wearing I think she's been wearing her mom's necklace. Because they definitely show her wearing it in the casket at the very beginning of the movie, Ellen. But they show Annie wearing it later, so I think maybe she took the necklace off of her mom before they buried her. Mm-hmm. But that symbol was on the telephone pole that decapitated Charlie, and now it is on the wall above where Ellen's headless body is. So, that's one of the symbols drawn in blood. Meanwhile, Peter is outside of his school eating lunch when Joan appears across the street and attempts to expel his spirit.
I expel you
From his body.
Or was she trying to get him expelled from school?
I don't know.
I mean, expulsion can go either way.
She does say, I expel you! Speaking of Joan, we haven't mentioned this yet, but she is played by Ann Dowd, who is just, she's fantastic in this role. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything that was bad. She is fantastic. I think she's a wonderful actress, and I love anytime I see her in a movie. So that's that.
Later in class, Peter is overtaken by the ring of light. There was a nod to this happening earlier in the film. He looks at his own reflection in a glass, and his reflection is menacingly smiling back at him.
Yeah, creepy.
But Peter is overtaken by the ring of light, and does one of the weirdest fucking things. His arm goes up in the air as if he's asking a question, but it's really contorted. His face starts contorting. I don't think they did this practically. I think they did this. There's no way.
They did everything practically. In fact, Alex Wolff went completely method, and I know you hate that. He went completely method for this film.
Because after this film was done, he had to go seek psychiatric fucking help!
He sure did. To the point where he would not allow anyone to call him Alex. He didn't introduce himself as Alex.
He didn't introduce himself as Alex until the last day of filming.
Yep, the last day of filming. He talked to Ari and said that he wanted to break his nose during filming. That was his goal, was to break his nose. And Ari was like, we're not doing that.
He did draw his own blood, though.
He went into he broke his own nose. He went into filming thinking he had a real desk, smashed his face into it as hard as he possibly could. It was cushioned. They cushioned it. He didn't know that. He did end up breaking his nose. And all the blood that you see on screen, that was his real blood. So, yeah, method, he broke his own nose, that's his real blood, like, no joke.
Idiotic. Fucking idiotic.
I personally think it's a really, really amazing performance. But that's me. I personally like when people go method.
I don't, because it affects them mentally.
It does.
After filming is done.
And
they very seldom never recover.
To the point where you have situations like Heath Ledger, who literally drove himself to the point of insanity. So yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. People that can do it, I think it's really cool. But
I mean,
I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, so some of the greatest actors are method actors, like Daniel Day-Lewis and stuff like that. I have to give David Howard Thornton props because they tried to get him to go method, and he's like, no, I can turn it on and off.
Yes, he can.
And that's a caliber of an actor that is invaluable in my opinion. Someone that can turn on the madness and turn it off. as opposed to somebody that just literally goes fucking mad because that's what their character is.
Yeah.
So I'll give David Howard Thornton his props, but we're not talking about Terrifier.
Anyways, back at the house, Annie makes Steve go up to the attic to see what she found.
I think it's my mother, but I can't tell because the skin's all black and she's all distended, but the head is gone.
And he's basically kind of like, yeah, sure, I'm going to find a body up there.
Well,
okay.
prior to this, though, he does actually get an email
with pictures
of Annie's mother's grave, desecrated, corpse removed, casket removed, and all this other stuff.
Yeah, but when he goes up and he finds that body, but when he comes back down, he essentially accuses Annie, not outright, but he basically accuses her of having dug up that body herself.
He basically, yeah.
You know, he thinks she has lost it.
I mean, she has, honestly.
That's true.
But, as a psychiatrist, Steve believes that Annie is having a psychotic break. Duh. And you can tell he just wants to get her help. Or he wants to try to get her help.
Yeah, he's trying. Like, I think Steve is like the grounding point of the whole family. Like, he's clearly the one that has it together.
I'm not going to do this with you anymore. What? No, it's not helpful.
Or the most together. The most together, because he breaks down
and starts bawling in the car
when he picks up Alex Peter from school after he broke his nose and everything like that. So yeah, he definitely had his breaking point.
Yeah. Annie tells Steve about what happened when she tried to burn Charlie's sketchbook and begs him to throw it in the fire and burn it for her because she can't bring herself to do it to kill herself. She knows that if that goes up in flames, so will she.
She even soaks the sketchbook in paint thinner,
yeah,
and begs him to do it. When he refuses, believing Annie has gone completely off the deep end, she snatches the book from him and flings it in the fire, only for Steve to spontaneously combust with flames and die.
I mean, he burns to death. Yeah. It is
in front of her.
And the reason that she does nothing is, as she's standing there in horror,
that ring of light
washes over her, and her face
literally changes.
Immediately goes blank, and she is possessed at that point. So yeah, she watches in horror, but yeah, it's at that point, she's not Annie anymore.
Outside, naked coven members begin gathering both inside and around the house.
Yeah, you can see them in the corners of the room sometimes. I mean, it's
creepy.
Why are they naked? Why are they fucking naked?
So I have a problem. The way my living room is set up, I have the windows.
Yeah, right behind you.
Right behind me. So whenever I'm watching something in the daytime,
especially during the day,
when it's dark, I can't fucking see shit.
Yeah. This is a movie that you have to watch with like
limited light.
Yeah.
I had to stand up for the last 15 minutes of this film so I could see what the fuck was going on, because I'm like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck?
There's a lot of weird
there totally
stuff
is.
in this
movie.
Totally is.
Peter wakes after dark and finds his father's charred corpse, then quickly notices one of the coven members in a nearby doorway.
Yeah, things kind of go off the rails at this point.
Oh, yeah, no, at this point, everything that it was prior to this, all this struggle with grief and coping and all this other stuff is thrown out the fucking window, and now
it's chaos.
Now we're introducing complete Shahos and spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah, pagan
magic,
worship, and
whatever.
Yeah, and magic, definitely.
Demons and shit like that. I don't know.
Annie, who is now possessed, chases Peter through the house. He attempts to hide in the attic, but Annie follows him, crawling across the ceiling and banging her fucking head on the ceiling over and over and over again. How she got up there, I don't know.
Mom, I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry.
How she stays up there, I don't fucking know, but it's fucking crazy.
Well, before she chases him, she is
crawling the walls, literally.
When he wakes up in his room, she's up in the corner.
Right.
When
you don't see it very
when
he
finds his father, she's up in the corner.
Yeah. She's following him all over.
And then she moves, and then she comes charging out of the shadows at him and chases him up to the fucking attic.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, Annie did find a way up into the attic, and Peter begins to hear the sound, this kind of squishing, creaking, squishing, splurging sound. And that sound is Annie attempting to decapitate herself with piano wire. Talk about garrote gone wrong.
A horrified Peter then jumps from the attic window and falls to his death.
I'm still not convinced he's dead, but whatever.
Just as he's falling out the window, we hear the sound of Annie's head
falling to the floor.
Hitting the floor, yeah. Woo!
The glowing orb then floats down to... Actually, Annie's body, headless body, comes out the window first.
True.
And then the glowing orb floats down to
Yeah, because it's no longer
Peter's
possessing her because she's dead.
Exactly. Floats down to Peter's body and apparently brings him back.
Reanimates him.
I'm still not convinced.
At least.
I'm not convinced that he's dead though.
Okay, but even if he's not dead,
it wakes him up.
It wake him up. Yeah.
Right. Now displaying Charlie's mannerisms in the aspect that he is now. He follows Annie's floating headless corpse up Charlie's treehouse. By the way,
yeah, we didn't talk about the treehouse too much.
Charlie had a penchant for sleeping in the treehouse, even if it was like freezing outside.
Yeah.
After Charlie's death, Annie had taken to sleeping out there, but she was at least smart enough to have fucking heaters.
Right. Inside the treehouse, Joan and other members of the cult and the headless corpses of both Annie and Lynn are worshipping a mannequin with Charlie's crowned severed head placed up on.
So they buried Charlie. I'm assuming that they buried her with her fucking head. We never got word that her grave had been desecrated.
No, but it could have happened that day. We don't know.
That's true.
That's
true. Joan then removes the crown from Charlie's severed head and places it upon Peter's head, addressing him as Charlie.
Charlie, you're all right now.
Mm-hmm. She then proclaims that Charlie is Payman.
You are Payman, one of the 8 kings of hell.
The coven, having corrected his female body and given him his preferred male host. The coven then hails Peter as King Payman. Hail, King Payman!
Hail, Payman! Hail!
Hail, King Payman!
We better stop. I'm not trying to summon a demon.
No. Why?
Because I believe in the supernatural and occult, so no. Yeah, I'm done. And I know that Ari Aster did his research and actually did find this, and no, I'm not trying to summon
And intentionally used altered sigils so that they would not have anything real on screen.
Still, I'm not fucking toying with it.
So are you confused?
I mean, I'm a little confused. I'm still not convinced that Peter died.
Okay.
I'm not convinced, and I'm not convinced that he was possessed, but I'll go with it for the sake of argument.
Okay. So it took me definitely a lot of time of processing and multiple times of watching this before I really got my view of what happens in this movie. So I'm personally going to give you my own quick little recap. So, Ellen Lee was the head of a cult that worshipped a deity called Payman. Who is one of Lucifer's most devoted followers. When Queen Lee had children, she attempted to bring Payman into the world through Annie's brother, which is why he claimed his mother was putting voices inside his head. When that didn't work, and he ended up unaliving himself, Ellen begged Annie to have children because she wanted to carry on. It needed to be someone hereditary. It needed to be someone related to her because she is the queen. So when that didn't work, she begged Annie to have kids, even though I really truly think Annie never wanted to have children.
I think you're right, because at some point she did try to kill,
she tried to have a miscarriage
before he was born, and attempted to kill them both later.
So when Peter was born, she went no contact with her mom, likely because Ellen was trying to find a way to bring Payman in through Peter, and not that Annie would have known that, but I'm sure that put a strain on their relationship.
Fuck yeah, it would.
I mean, that would put a strain on any relationship, and I would go no contact if my mom was being psycho like that too. Until 3 years later when Charlie was born, and then she allowed her mom to come back into her life. At that point, Charlie was possessed by Payman. I think from baby. That's my personal thought.
I mean, it is stated in the film that Charlie knows for a fact that her grandmother wanted Charlie to be a boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, let's see here. Where am I at here? Okay. She's trying to bring Payman in through Charlie. The presence of Payman in Charlie is indicated by the cluck. The clucking is Payman, not Charlie. Again, this is my interpretation. Payman prefers a male body. So Charlie had to die in order for Payman to be transferred into Peter's body. When Annie eventually meets Joan teaches her how to do the seance, which is actually not a seance. It is an incantation. She even says, I don't know what language this is. Joan knows what language it is. But it is an incantation to get things started. In other words, Annie has started the process of Payman taking over Peter. In the end, Peter dies when he jumps from the attic. Hallie disagrees.
I'm not convinced.
Even if he doesn't die, he becomes possessed when Payman takes over his body. Residing within Peter's body at the end are both Charlie's spirit and Payman, which is why Joan says, Charlie, can you hear me? So Charlie has had Payman with her all her life. So now bringing the reason that they needed Charlie and Payman both to come into Peter is so that the whole body can be together.
I mean, I understand what is trying to be done. I understand your analysis and breakdown of it.
Sure.
I just don't agree with it. And
fair enough.
I'm entitled to my opinion.
Fair enough.
That being said, I think this is a brilliant...
interpreted in so many ways.
To me, the ending was very ambiguous, and I think it was left open to interpretation.
For sure.
It's definitely implied that he was possessed. I'm just not 100% convinced that he was fully possessed. I think that he was still in there someplace.
Yeah.
And there is a chance for him to crawl his way back out.
Okay.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my hopeful interpretation of it.
Right.
That being said, I do give this a bloody machete up. It is fucking sick and twisted film. It's drawn out getting to the ending, but once
in
you
a way
hit
that you almost need every part of it to be drawn out for it to lead to where you're going.
It builds the suspense, it builds the character development and all this other stuff. But it was like leading up to the last 15-20 minutes of the film, to me all of that stuff was rather boring for a horror film. For a horror film, it's boring.
I would say it's definitely horror, but it's more of a psychological horror.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to call it a psychological thriller. It's a psychological horror. There's definitely horror in this. I mean, it is... it's a straight-up horror film. You know, you've got people burning alive, people cutting their own heads off. I mean, there's a lot of horrific things.
Agreed.
But it is more psychological than anything.
We go through about an hour... 20 minutes before we get to the real horrors of this film.
I don't know.
So
watching Charlie's head come off was pretty horrific.
Again, it didn't look like her head came off. It just looked like it was smashed. I don't know if it was just a bad take that they used, that it didn't, the head didn't pop off, or whatever. Irregardless.
I think even the first time I watched it, I didn't realize she was decapitated until they showed her head.
Right. No, I get that.
So I assumed, the first time I watched it, I assumed that Annie goes down and finds a dead body, not a decapitated body.
Right.
It wasn't until they showed her head on the side of the road that I was like, oh, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shit. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, that's, again, also, bloody machete up. Ari Aster is amazing, and I can't wait for us to do another one of his films.
Beau is Afraid?
Wait for summertime. That'll give you a hint.
Beau is Afraid?
That's not horror, actually.
No, it's kind of horror. Joaquin Phoenix, so it's horror.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's go ahead and get this out of here. We got another really good one coming for you guys now. What do we got, Hallie? You want to tell them?
Well, we're still dealing with psychological horror.
Yes, we are.
But we're revisiting probably one of the most prolific horror writers of at least the last 50 years.
Easily.
In his one and only sequel that he's ever done, we're going back to the world of Danny Torrance with Dr. Sleep.
Yes. If you have not seen this movie, please watch it and come back next week.
And please watch
the director's cut, because I didn't. Oops. you'll see next week when we kind of compare, because she watched the director's cut, I did not, and we'll see what the differences are there too.
There's 30 minutes of additional footage between the theatrical and director's cut, so
yeah, I missed out on a lot. And apparently the director's cut is way better. Anyway, so make sure you watch this and come back next week where we will be breaking down this movie. And until next time, make sure you slash the subscribe button,
stab that like button,
and ring-a-ling the grave bell so you don't get lost in the mix and you stay up to date on all the things we are doing right here on the tube of you.
Until then, we will see you all
in the afterlife.